So today I have Nick Kremer on from Driven Leads. We have to talk about the pay-per-click strategy for real estate agents because a lot of my great clients and friends out there who have big budgets with Zillow or Realtor, Zillow is now pulling some of their leads away from some of the smaller budget teams and moving towards the Flex program. So today we have to break down with Nick, how do we replace that lead source and continue to grow and expand our databases, our brand, support our teams, and to continue to increase our revenue when this lead source for a lot of you is being taken away right now. So Nick, I would love for you to share maybe some of examples that you're dealing with right now in people who are leaving or either slowly taking some budget away from some of these big Zillow Realtor and moving it over to you at the pay-per-click level. Can you share some examples of some people that are doing this, what's working, what's not working, and what are my friends out there need to know to start making this transition?
Yeah, good question. It's a hot topic and it has been for the last 18 months with us since Zillow Flex sort of announced. Zillow showed their cards and said, hey, we are a broker, in moving towards what I think everybody sees as the future is Zillow being a full brokerage with their own internal everything. So to start that off, I've got a lot of clients that are actually Zillow Flex clients that are planning for that moment ahead of schedule. So they're still doing Zillow Flex, but they're also getting all of their affairs in order and really looking at what happens if this gets shut off. So here's what we're spending today. Can we move 10, 20, 30, 100% of that ad spend over into Google Ads? And the answer is always typically yes. It just comes down to making sure that you have all your follow-ups and everything set. If you've got your systems in place where you can do that, because it's a different type of lead. But then there's also, with the onset of the Google local services, there's also an opportunity to get leads quickly, similar to Zillow. So people are putting money in a couple of different buckets now. A good example, we've got agents that are anywhere from we're spending $5,000 to $100,000. And those ones that are spending $5,000 are possibly taking that money, putting $1,000 to $2,000 into the typical PPC that everybody thinks about, like homes for sale in San Diego, homes for sale in XYZ. There, with the new onset with Google local services, there's a lot more people that are looking to do instant calls, which are pretty similar to Google or to Zillow, where it's a quick lead. You're getting that closing a lot faster than you are on that long-term play.
Yeah, so it's the same as like a connection call, but through Google. And typically the search term is what, like real estate agent in city name.
Realtor near me, best
Realtor
agent
near
in,
me, best agent in,
top agent, real estate broker. And then you can also do keyword subsets, homes for sale near me, and do, we call it a near me local campaign. Give that option as a click to call. So you're telling Google, if it's a mobile search, allow them to press this button and call us directly. We're seeing a lot more calls come up on that. And what that equates to is instead of being, let's say all things being equal, we'll call the homes for sale. And San Diego's a bad example because it's a crazy, but if we're doing homes for sale Dallas, $10 a lead, $10 to $15 a lead. If you're doing homes for sale near me and you're trying to do a click to call, or you're doing agent in or top agent in or agent near me, that could be a $35 lead. But again, that's, if you're answering your phones and doing what you're supposed to on your side, that's a very valuable lead at the same time. Yeah. So when we're having clients come to us and say, how do we offset Zillow? We have that conversation. And it's the same thing I say in seems like every time I get on a Zoom or a webinar or podcast, it depends. It depends on what you want to do. What is your plan as an agent or a broker or a team leader? What's your team available for? If you're not answering that phone, don't do that. Just let those leads come in naturally like they always have. If you do have a good follow-up system, if you have your phone numbers set up with Sierra Interactive is a solution that you and I both love. You've got it where we can set up an individualized phone numbers where that comes in, that creates a lead and drops to the person that's supposed to drop to, then the success is a lot higher. But yeah, we're seeing clients anywhere, again, from where we traditionally had people with budgets from 1,500 to, let's say, 20 grand. That's flexed heavily. And I hate to use that term as a pun, but it's moved up where we've got some agents spending 100 grand and completely offsetting Zillow. And what that looks like is they used to have a ton of zip codes. They were spent 50 to 80 to 100 grand a month, not a year, but a month on Zillow leads. and knowing that they had to kick back a percentage of each one of those sales.
$35 versus 35%.
Right.
Doesn't take a math genius to figure that one out, guys. Right.
Yeah.
I want to stop that was very helpful to hear you share some of what you're experiencing with some of these great players. And I just want to, for some of my friends out there, one of the key things, they have their conversion set up, whether or not they've got the ISA, whether or not they've got the lead routing, whether or not they've got the team that's answering the phones effectively, or whether or not they've got a long-term nurture campaign to be able to convert the lead 1 year, 2 years down the road. Some of my friends have all invested a lot of money in lead generation and in lead, but they didn't have lead conversion set up. Yeah. And so, guys, let's make sure that we're not, you pet a dog and all dogs bite, right? If you don't have your lead conversion system set up, then let's get that set up first. And then we can now go expand and scale. That was really helpful. Is there some best practices or some common mistakes or some myths that you're experiencing when you were dealing with these agents coming from a Zillow type of lead to a Google lead?
Yeah, the myth is that Zillow dictates everything on the home search. It's not the case. And the myth is that,
what do you mean by that?
Everybody's under the impression that the population goes through their Google Chrome and types in Zillow.com and hits enter. They do a search. Probably 70% of the time they do a search. They don't go directly to Zillow unless they have that app on their phone and they're already indoctrinated with Zillow. They're typically going in Zillow Homes in San Diego. That's a keyword search you can go after if you want it. It's a little bit more expensive, but it could be one that is a better, quicker opportunity as well. So a lot of people are under the impression that we just had a new client start the other day that we were doing listing leads or seller leads. And somebody said Zillow home prices was a keyword. And people don't really search that, do they? I'm like, thousands of times a day. Yeah. It happens all the time. And that's a keyword you can bid on. You just can't use the Zillow term inside those ads. So those ads have to see what your home is worth today, find the latest property prices for you. But the biggest myth is everybody thinks that Zillow dictates that landscape when they're out there bidding on keywords no different than we are. Mm-hmm. We're just getting more hyper local with it. So it's that common myth. And then the other myth is, well, Zillow lead's going to close in 30 to 45 days and a Google lead's going to close in 18 months. Pre-pandemic and pre-inventory issues, there was some truth to that. But it was also because 99% of the people didn't want to pay double or triple that $10 lead to get those quicker closings. Now, when we're having that conversation with more of the clients, we've got where we used to be 99% of our clients would just do the longer term keywords that were a longer play. They didn't realize that you could do those quicker ones where it's real estate agent near, homes for sale near me, best real estate agent, top agent in, top broker in. Those kind of terms are the ones that are turning over quicker. And then even the old faithfuls are turning over a lot quicker depending on what your market is. So right. If an inventory is tight, if things are moving quickly, we're seeing people turn over and take a lead and turn that into a sale in 90 to 180 days and not the year long. There's still those long trailing ones that we have agents come back and say, hey, I closed the lead from June of 2020. Yeah, that happens. But that's the myth where everybody is under the impression of it's going to be a long-term play.
Long-term nurtures. Thank you for sharing, because I understand the keyword research that you're referencing, but I think a lot of people don't understand keyword search in terms of consumer behavior and consumer intent. And so what you're saying is we can do the tried and true long-term research intent, but there's also some immediate intent, some high intent now to find someone, and you've got that all mapped into part of your consulting service. Again, guys, this is why you guys should be hiring one of the best, which is Nick is one of those guys in our industry, to get this extra level of customization to be able to solve some of these big problems, right? Now, I would say that's probably one of the biggest misperceptions. And I'll just, one more thing too, when we came into this very extreme low inventory market across the United States, the consumer actually knows now that they need a good real estate agent. Nick, if you agree with me, but between like kind of 17 through 19, it seemed like the consumer was like, I don't need a real estate agent, was the kind of general narrative. Then the market got really intense. And then they're like, I have to have a great realtor. So maybe some of that stuff that we were dealing with before is not there in the general mind of the buyer today as well. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're 100%. I sold a house and built a new one in 17, 18. And a lot of people were like, why are you using an agent to sell your house? I'm like, because I want it to be done properly, because the unknowns are stuff that I don't want to deal with. And I'm fine with paying to have that professional do that for me. No different than buying a house. But yeah, it has changed drastically. You're right. Now people are, a lot of people are scared. Before, a lot of people came in and said rates are really low. There's a ton of houses out there. I'm going to find a dream house. It's going to be great. And then all that flipped when the inventory is flipped. And now you've got to have somebody that is good at helping you get to where you want to be. No different than us in our consulting, asking questions, educating that buyer, educating that agent with what we do. And there's a ton of ways you can do that before you even have them signed up with either getting their listing or getting a buyer's agreement with them. You can do that. You know where I'm going with this. You can do that with YouTube pretty easily. So there's a lot of people out there trying to look for answers. They're looking for that beacon of light to say, hey, this is what you need to do to navigate this market. And the ones that are doing that really well, there's a lot of people making good money doing that on YouTube. And there's a lot of our agents that are spending a good amount of money, again, offsetting their Zillow expenses, taking that money and putting it in separate buckets. So if you're going to generate 5,000 clicks a month for 5,000 people that are raising their hands saying, I'm eventually buying a house, why wouldn't you get in front of 5,000 of those people inside YouTube as well? Because there's a good chance that they're consuming content there. And you can get in front of them one-on-one and personal and saying, if you're looking to buy a house in San Diego in 2022, it's completely different than it was in 17 or the last time you purchased. Here are the common things you need to know, and this is why you need to know it. And that kind of stuff there, that the agents that are doing that are getting in front of their potential clients and in front of their database, really winning big. They're cleaning up, and they might not be telling you about it, but there's a lot of them out there doing it.
Yeah, I think which we discussed before this call is if you are doing some type of content education, if you're doing some video education, mapping that into some of these colder, low cost leads is really a game changer in increasing conversion. Yep. And we saw that, you and I saw that with Mike Novak early on. The more video he did, then the better the conversion was on the colder leads, the lower cost leads. It's a game changer. I have a client who we worked on his YouTube strategy and built out his YouTube channel, organic. He's generated 150 leads already, and it's just scaling big time right now. And so what I'm wanting from him is to connect with you to build up the database of these lower cost leads to funnel them into watching his YouTube content, because it's all coming together and working now. So now I just need him to also get on with the Google local services, because he's got the great team who are really responsive, pick up the phone, book the consultation, book the appointment, close the deal. So that's a trifecta of amazingness.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
That responsive call thing you talked about, like we had one client that was walking away from Zillow. He didn't tell his agents that he was paring down that spend. He just started pumping more calls into that same phone number. They were under the impression that it was Zillow Leads, when in fact there was it was GLS, and it was a bunch of a click to call now. They caught on to it after a while, but he's treat every single time that phone rings like it's a Zillow lead. Your conversion rate is going to go up. Our profitability goes up on that. That's a big mindset thing too.
Yes. Yep. That's very cool. Good. So what else do we need to know right now? It sounds like the world of Google is really expanding their product and giving us more options to be able to control our own businesses and the lead flow. Is there anything else that we need to know regarding the Google listing service ads, the pay-per-click ads, some of these low versus high intent stuff? Is there anything else besides that they just need to call you and do a consultation with you like immediately and get their butt moving in the right direction?
And I'll start out with that. We'll do a phone call with anybody. You don't have to be a client for us to give you answers to the questions that you see. I know I need to be better at doing more of these, doing the FAQs and getting my content on YouTube so people can understand what to look for and what's the difference in them. Having that conversation on what's the cost difference in them, how much do you want to invest in each one of those buckets? And knowing that with the beauty with Google is that you can move that on the fly. So you can spend 2 weeks one way, 2 weeks another way. You can pause everything out in a matter of minutes if it's not working to where you want to, but it does take time. So when we do that, we always tell people, give it X amount of days or months to show what its value is or what it isn't. So the other beautiful thing on that is if the phone doesn't ring with your Google Leads, you're not paying any money. That doesn't cost you anything. That's another common misconception, is that I have a budget of, let's say, $5,000 a month for Google local services. I've got $5,000 a month for click to call, and I'm out 10 grand every month. You're not, because Google local services, a lot of people are seeing that sort of dwindle down and trickle down. The reason for that is that about 1 million agents are on it now, where a year ago, it was still new. There's just people getting on it. And now that we've had people have a taste of that, it's an easier conversation for us to have with them and say, you can offset that with what it costs you typically on those leads to do that click to call. It's coming from the same source. It's similar in the sense that they're doing that search. You're able to do that lead the same way, and it could potentially be less expensive. And you can ensure that there's not going to be any rental leads. That's the biggest hang up for people on GLS, is that people are calling for rental leads.
Yeah. Can we touch that for a second? Because I think that is one of the big issues that I've experienced with some of my clients. The classic, oh, those leads are all trash, right?
Yep.
When you're dealing pro like you kind of know what to get out of the way, meaning not to bid on, not to get. So can you elaborate on that? Because what I've heard from a bunch of people is, there's a lot of rental leads or these trash leads in the Google listing ads. Is there something that is not happening with all the other services that are running this right now that are screwing it up for them?
Yeah. So we have this phrase in the office, Google's going to Google. They're going to do what they want ultimately. You can direct it and try to get it pigeonholed into what you want more. So when you're doing Google local services, you can tell it you don't want rental leads, but a lot of times it's going to come through with rental leads and some other unsavory leads that you just don't want. That's the Google tax. We also have a bunch of PPC.
That's the Google tax.
we call that. We just had that conversation that every other week we do a webinar with PPC managers, and then we call it the Google tax. Google's going to come out and get money. There's nothing you can do to stop it. With GLS, with Google local services, those local services, they're going to push those through. And we saw it where a client just kept on going in and disputing it. And he disputed so many that they just shut him off. They're like, we're going to be done with this guy because he complains about every lead. I sort of told them, are you making money on it? What's your ROI on it? Ultimately, you might want to just accept those and either find somebody that wants to do rental leads and push them off as a referral, or just delete them and make sure that the other leads keep coming through. With the click to call and the stuff looking for agent near me, we can limit that, where the word rental, the term rent, apartment, there's any kinds of terms. We have agents that just want to do single family homes and no condos or townhomes. So we can limit that with our keyword negative keyword swipe list. So if we know for a fact that there's something that they don't want to be a part of and they don't want to have come through as a lead, we negate all that. Now, you're not going to stop 100% of it, but you're going to kills 99% of all bacteria.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the big lessons in lead generation and conversions is to understand the math equations, because there's no such thing as perfection, and there's no such thing as the perfect lead or the perfect anything. Now, most people know that, but I find so many of my agents who are like, oh my gosh, I got a call. And I'm like, one call, what about the other 10? But that one was so bad and I don't want any more of those. So there's a little bit of understanding the math of this. 2 calls are going to be absolute throwaways. 3 calls are something that you're probably not interested in. Another 4 calls are a good opportunity, but not tomorrow. They're not going to buy a house tomorrow. And maybe 1 is like we're going to buy a house and we're ready to go. And could you just please help us? So it's like understanding the math, and that might shift in every single marketplace and might shift on price points and whatnot. So I think once people start to see the math, then they can explain that to their sales team to go, here's the general math. So just expect these things to occur, and let's optimize for the perfect customer every time. Mm-hmm. And what I think a lot of agents do is they start optimizing their scripting and their strategy to avoid the bad stuff. And what happens is the good person, the one good one, they actually weren't attracted to that strategy.
Yeah.
And so the best agents, the people that have the highest conversions, they optimize for the perfect customer every time. The perfect customer who wants to write an offer with them on this appointment that they just are talking to you about. And then everybody else is responsive to that good strategy. And then everybody else who's not the right customer, they're repelled by it, which is perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly what we want.
Yep.
But it's like a twofold: understand the math, then optimize for the perfect customer. Then the bad ones will disappear and it's totally fine. And everybody gets to play the game and we're off and running. Let's make more money. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Knowing your numbers is a big thing too. When I tell people outside of the industry, when we're working with the real estate industry, with agents and brokers and team leads, I let them know that sometimes there's a lot of our clients that they get a 1% conversion rate. So 100 leads, one deal. Like, oh, that sucks. I'm like, well, if you hate giving me $1 and you taking 10 back, yeah, that does suck. But there's a bunch of them out there where if they knew those numbers, now the difference between going from a 1% to a 2% is in the follow-up, or is in your cadence and in the work that you do, or in the conversation that we have with the clients. So that's a big thing too. When people ask us, what's the difference between you and your competitor, or you and my buddy that does, ads for local businesses? And I'll tell them every time, it's the communication. It's if you and I get on, Patrick, if you and I get on a call and we're talking about what your leads look like the last few months, and I'm talking to you about which neighborhoods all the closings are coming from or which cities, then we're going to optimize for that. And your conversion rate should go to 1 to 2% just on us having that conversation. And yeah, as you get better, if you're trying to master your craft, you should go from a 1 to 2% from there. So when you're looking at, instead of taking $1 and getting 10 back, there's a potential for 30 with no more spend. I think that's the crazy thing there, is what you can optimize if you really want it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people they're in too much of a hurry and they don't understand the nuances. And then instead of talking to you about trends and looking for opportunities, knowing that we can make adjustments to find better opportunities, that's all that we need to do. It's just look at the math, look at the numbers, think through the trends, and then figure out how we can attract more of the better opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess this is why all the top guys work with you. And this is why I have a tough time. So many agents out there have hired the lame company, the templated company, the formulaic companies, the general services. They tried it, they failed, it was miserable. And then I pet a dog, it bit once, and all dogs bite. Versus going and finding the best in class in the topic set, and then figuring out how to align with them is really always the most successful strategy in any industry, in any market.
Yeah.
So Nick, thank you so much for your time, man. This was super valuable and helpful. Of course, I learned a bunch of stuff. They need to contact you. Is there a way to just book a consultation appointment with you? How should they go into the drivenleads.com, driven leads with a plural s.com?
Driven leads. Yep.
Okay, cool. I'll put that down below. And then they just need to book an appointment with your team and start consulting with you guys and figure out what the game plan is.
Yep. Questions are free. Yeah. And ask questions anytime.
Exactly. Hey, thanks so much for your time, man. Have an awesome day.
You bet. You too, man.